Hi, my name is Christy, and this is the American Chinese Food Show, where we analyze historical artifacts like vintage menus, recipe books, photographs, and text to tell the story of American Chinese food. When we look at a menu, we often see a moment in time, frozen, without much context of how it started or how it ended. Today I want to tell the story of one of my favorite vintage Chinese menus and a bit of its afterlife. This menu is from the Lan Ting Chop Suey house in Honolulu, Oahu, Hawaii. This menu should be from the 1930s. The reason I love it is because you can see there's a lot of care put in the offerings. There are dishes that are clearly a community service to Chinese immigrants. I love that they imported essentials like ham dan, salted duck eggs, and sun choy, preserved vegetables like napa cabbage and mustard greens. Seemingly cheap items, but are perfect for a cheap meal with rice. As well as I'd imagine pretty difficult to get ingredients like tin gai frogs, which can only be catered to Chinese people. There are also dishes that take a long time to make and therefore are seldomly seen in other restaurants. Watercress soup is one of my favorite Cantonese slow-cooked soups. Any Cantonese soup takes anywhere from 2 to 5 hours to make. Unlike popular soups you see today like egg drop soup, that's mostly a broth and cornstarch thickener that takes less than 5 minutes. Wat gai is a dish that requires a lot of work. You have to first marinate and steam the chicken, then lightly fry it with hot oil, debone, then steam it again. I don't think I have ever seen this menu item anywhere else before in Chinese menus in the United States. Kau-yuk is another one that takes hours to make. You first blanch the pork belly, marinate it, then deep fry it with the skin down and steam it for at least an hour. Then there are also dishes that I grew up with. I especially enjoy the pork items here. Olive nuts are one of the more expensive nuts. In high-end Cantonese dishes, we often sprinkle a little bit of deep-fried olive nuts to add that aroma to the dish. Sometimes we add it to pastry. It's also an indispensable ingredient in making mooncakes. There are also home-style pork dishes that I myself make quite often, like yolk bang, pork hash, sometimes with ham dan, so pork hash with salted egg, hong xiu pai guat, roast spare ribs with red sauce. The flathead grey mullet can be found all over the South China Sea where the ocean water and river water converge. The Cantonese like to just steam the mullet, maybe with lemons or plums. There are 3 species, however, of mullet that are native to Hawaiian waters. So the striped mullet and sharp-nosed mullet and the summer mullet. I think it's such a nice touch to utilize native fishes with traditional Cantonese cooking methods. It's very clear the owner of this restaurant knew a thing or two about Cantonese and high-end Cantonese food, unlike many of the restaurant owners at the time who chose the industry because of a lack of choice and were not really trained for the profession. Let's also take a look at the front of the menu. The man depicted here, I believe, is the greatest calligrapher in the history of China. So what does Lan Ting mean? Lan Ting means Orchard Pavilion. It's a place in today's Shaoxing, Zhejiang province in China. In the year 353, Wang Xiji held a spring purification ceremony at Lan Ting, where he was appointed governor at the time. During the event, 42 literati gathered along the banks of a stream and had a drinking contest. Cups of wine were drifting down from the upstream, and whenever a cup stopped in front of a guest, he had to compose a poem, or otherwise drink the wine. At the end of the day, they composed 37 poems in total, and Wang wrote the preface on the spot. The aesthetic form of the manuscript is highly appreciated and copied by calligraphy students over the past 2,000 years. Including the Emperor Taizong of Tang Dynasty, who buried Wang's manuscript with him. Someone who named his restaurant after the Orchard Pavilion to me is a sign of being educated. So who was the owner? We can find out at the back of the menu. George Inn, owner and manager. Not much is there for George Inn other than the 1940 federal census. George Inn was 36 at the time. He was born in China. He had a 26-year-old wife, Jennie Wong, born in Hawaii. They got married in 1939. But if you look at their occupation, there's no restaurant. George was the general manager of an art and gift store, and Jennie was a saleswoman there. This is further confirmed by the Handbook of Chinese in Hawaii in 1950. George was the owner of the inn's gift shop at 3569 Wailea Avenue, and someone named Li Wah Chong was the owner of Lan Ting Chop Suey instead. Since there's no other George Inn found in census that matches the age, it's a safe assumption that George sold his restaurant business before 1940 and focused his energy on a gift shop instead. We have another menu from Lan Ting Chop Suey in the 40s, when George was no longer the owner. I apologize for the low resolution here, this is all we have. We know this comes after our previous menu because the prices are a bit higher, and the menu also went through a complete makeover. Most of the dishes that made Lan Ting special were gone. For the chicken section, olive nut and gai lan, Chinese broccoli, what gai were no longer available. For the miscellaneous section, everything we saw previously was replaced except for steamed rice with chicken and roast duck. No more frogs or salted eggs. Instead, we now have spare ribs. But at least the restaurant enjoyed some commercial success. For example, from the 1945 yearbook from the University of Hawaii, we know the editorial staff of the student newspaper celebrated publication of a Christmas edition with a dinner at Lan Ting's, followed by a movie. There's not much else on George Inn other than that he traveled by air from Honolulu to China in 1946, probably for work, and that Inn's gift shop sponsored the Primos Frolic, a party or a dance in Hawaii in 1948. However, we have more information on his wife, Jennie Wong Inn. She became the manager of the Moiliili Chop Suey since it opened in 1964 and appeared in a news article in 1966. She was, quote, what made Moiliili different. She planned the menu and the special parties. There was no mention of George in her obituary in 2005 when she passed at the age of 91, which states she was survived by nephews and nieces. We know she's the middle child of 5 with 2 older brothers and 2 younger sisters. It seems from the obituary Jennie made Moili'i Chop Suey her lifelong career. We don't know what happened to George in the Lan Ting restaurant he sold or his inn's gift shop, but we know that at one point in Honolulu, there was a sincere desire to bring Cantonese high-end and home-style cooking to the island. This is an episode dedicated to my sister-in-law. I hope you enjoy it. If you like our content, please subscribe to our channel. See you soon.